The NHS was within 6 or 7 hours of running out of PPE in the first COVID wave, says Matt Hancock. We're going to read into this more from Sky News, you guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here with an article from Sky News with the headline that the National Healthcare Service, the NHS, was within 6 or 7 hours of running out of PPE in the first COVID wave, says Matt Hancock. The former Health Secretary also tells the public inquiry he believes the government got wrong how funeral guidance was applied throughout the country. Guys, while you're here, make sure you hit the like button and share it across social media so others are notified of this video. Matt Hancock, this is the same guy that thought it was perfectly okay to allow patients who were not tested for vaccination to dump them into social care from the just free up beds in the NHS hospital. That caused more people to die than necessary. Now, his argument at the time was there were not enough NHS beds. Then the other argument that he made, and that was that there wasn't enough vaccines. One thing we do know is that he made a conscious decision to kill people, to put people at serious risk. This is the same former Home Secretary who is more interested in groping another woman than actually doing his goddamn job. This guy is an abomination. He should have never be anywhere near politics. He is a liar, he is a fraud, he is a scumbag, and he should be in prison for the things that this man has done. He does not care about you. He has never cared about the public. And when it came to personal protective equipment, he was more interested in enriching his buddies than getting the personal protective equipment that was available in the UK that was ready to go, proper PPE equipment that was ready to go to be handed to the UK government. And all it took was a phone call. There were call-ins on radios and on TV of those of companies that had the PPE ready to go, ready to give it to the government. And he and his department refused to take it and instead buy it off their mates and buddies who got shoddy crap PPE from places in some parts of China and other parts of the world that was absolutely crap and not viable to provide to our NHS doctors and nurses, which was so useless. We ended up wasting billions of pounds of taxpayer money. So not only did this guy cause the deaths of innocent people by his actions, but he also burned away billions of taxpayer money that you put into. Another reason why you should never vote for the Conservative Party. Some hospitals in England were within 6 or 7 hours of running out of personal protective equipment in the early stages of the COVID pandemic, the former Health Secretary has admitted. Matt Hancock, who is no longer an MP, told the COVID public inquiry that some hospitals came extremely close to running out of stock in the first wave of the pandemic in spring 2020. Let's be clear. There were companies and there were businesses within the UK that were ready to give that PPE. Okay, they were there. They had the stuff. It was good stuff. The government just had to literally buy the stock of them, and they would have made sure that that would have gotten to the hospitals, to where they needed it. But they deliberately and intentionally ignored them so that they could buy PPE from their buddies instead, which led to this extremely close shortage. Mr. Hancock, who was Health Secretary between 2018 and 2021, was giving evidence in the latest session of the UK COVID-19 inquiry, looking at the impact the pandemic had on the healthcare system, patients and healthcare workers. This morning, he was booed by protesters as he arrived to give evidence at the inquiry. Lead counsel to the inquiry, Jacqueline Carey KC, asked for the ex-cabinet minister, do you accept that entering the coronavirus pandemic as we did, without a single gown, severely hampered the ability to provide safe and appropriate PPE for healthcare workers? He replied, the stockpile that we had was not as good as it needs to be in the future, absolutely. That's because you chose not to get, because you and your department chose not to get it from those who had good enough PPE equipment. It was a deliberate and conscious decision to get crap and shoddy ones. Pressed on whether England ever ran out of personal protective equipment, Mr. Hancock said, as a whole, no, but individual locations did. Yes, individual locations did, because we famously remember people wrapped in black bags and whatnot, desperately to protect themselves from COVID. Referring to the supply of gowns in April 2020, in light of reports that some nurses at hospitals in London have been forced to wear bin bags as protection, Mr. Hancock said gowns, I think at one point we got within 6 or 7 hours of running out. We were working incredibly hard to make sure that we didn't have a stock out. We nearly did. Mr. Hancock was a familiar face at the regular press conferences that took place during the pandemic, but was forced to resign in 2021 after he admitted breaking the government's coronavirus guidance while pursuing an affair with an aide. The inquiry, which was also heard other government figures, including Boris Johnson and former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, is examining the government's response to the pandemic. Their response was shit. Mr. Hancock also admitted during the inquiry session he believed the government got wrong the way funeral guidance was applied across the country during the pandemic. During the early days of the COVID crisis, the number of people who could attend funerals was limited, with mourners told to keep 2 meters apart and only the closest relatives advised to attend. Well, I think we got it wrong was how the funeral guidance was applied on the ground. It wasn't as it had been intended, he told the inquiry. Well, what was the intention then? But of course, funerals were places where people gather, are deeply emotional, and people come together. That was also the thing that was driving the spread of the virus. These were very difficult considerations. I disagree that... I can't say that, can I? Do you know how much I hated that I couldn't go to my granddad's funeral? And I'm sure many of you could not go to the funerals and say goodbye to your loved ones during that time. I hated it. My mum video recorded some of it on behalf of the family so we could see it, but I hated that. I hate not being able to say my proper goodbyes. But for some people, for some it's a lot worse. But I also understood why it was in place, to protect us as well. But what's even more harder is, obviously, especially at funerals, you not to hold hands and say goodbye and hug one another relatives, because you have to keep distance, and it was brutal, absolutely brutal for people. Broadly on balance, I think they were about right, but we can go through every single decision and you can easily make an argument one way or the other. You made shit decisions. You made some terrible decisions. I think in the aspect of funeral, I think they did get it right on that. But what he did when it comes to the hospital beds and social care, I thought was barbaric. I still think that was barbaric, and I generally believe that it allegedly killed people. I really, really do. It boils my blood that man, of the things that he's done, has just been allowed to just carry on with his life, with his big fat paycheck as a health secretary, with some of the decisions that he has made. It makes me sick to my stomach. You know, because he's a politician, because of what he did, he won't face any criminality for it. But if anyone else in any other aspect of life did the things that he did, they would face the law, but he won't. And it makes me sick. It really, really does, guys. So what do you guys make of what Matt Hancock has said about the NHS within 6 or 7 hours of running out of PPE? Do you think... was he right in some of the comments that he's made at the COVID inquiry? What are your thoughts on the inquiry so far? Let me know your thoughts and more down in the comments section below. If you found this video informative, please hit the like button. Greatly appreciated. Share this across social media so others are notified of this video. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing, because it really does help support the channel. If you want to go one step further and financially support me and the work that I do here, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p, or you can join me on Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content on those platforms. So thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.